I realized the way that AI fits into my life, and I think into most people's life in its current iteration, is that it's a multiplicative function.
Well, hello, and welcome to another edition of the E-commerce Evolution Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Curry, CEO of OMG Commerce. And today we've got a returning guest. This man is a legend in the D2C space. He knows data. He knows brands. He knows good fashion. He knows how to wear a killer ball cap, killer hat. I want to talk to him about his hat game in just a minute for those that are watching the video. And so we're going to talk about a couple of really big topics that I'm super excited about. We're going to talk about customer journey and where things are broken in the D2C industry and some thoughts, maybe a thesis you should adopt on how to improve the customer journey. We're also going to talk about AI because, hey, everybody's talking about AI, right? But the reason we're going to talk about AI is because there's maybe a new or maybe some clarity we can bring to you and that Rabah can bring to you on that topic. And so my guest is Rabah Rahil. We go way back. Love this guy. He is now the CMO of Rabah, which is a customer journey optimization platform that transforms clicks into conversions, which is a killer line, and I bet Rabah had something to do with that. So, my man, Rabah, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
Brett, thank you so much. And that what a man, I need you to walk around with me all the time for those kind of intros. I'm all pumped up, man.
I think in another time, if I was like a medieval times guy, I could be a herald. I think that's what they were called, right? They just walk around and talk like just. Here is Rabah Rahil, and he's the man. Anyway, I think I could do that.
I could totally. You could definitely pull off the fit for sure.
Oh man, so
obviously, big fan of the show. Second time, so achievement unlocked. And yeah, man, just one of my favorite humans to jam with.
Sweet. And so I teed it up so we can't leave people hanging. You're wearing a killer hat. I think I've seen another. Maybe I saw Nick Shack wearing that hat too, but carte blanche on the hat. Tell me the scoop on that. It's like an orange. It's got a real good vibe going here.
This is my orange heater. I have another one back there. Yeah, I just shout out Shaq. Yeah, he put me onto the brand, and I've just really loved what they've done. They're a little bit of a drop kind of vibe where they'll do drops and stuff like that. So there's a little bit of a scarcity vector, and just Adam and Louie have been building. It's kind of one of those. Old jokes of like 10 years in the making of an overnight success type of thing. They've been grinding, and now they're really seeing a lot of awesomeness from just great product, great branding, great customer experience. So just I actually just now what was that? Yeah, Black Friday, Cyber Monday made the first actual apparel perch. So they're dipping into apparel now as well. So yeah, super fun brand, great vibe, great experience.
Carte blanche, and I am saying that right. I've heard. Yeah. So check that out. Not a sponsor of the show, but doing cool things. And man, I tip my hat, no real pun intended there, to anybody that can anyone can work in the apparel space, the hat space. Like, it's just so hard. It's so hard to nail fashion and to get people to wear your stuff, and so they're doing it, and that is pretty cool. So we're going to talk about customer journey in a minute. Really excited to dive into that. I'm a big fan of the way people shop and why they shop and how do we influence that and make that better. Let's talk AI a little bit because obviously this is not a new topic, but I think the real key is like, how are we going to use it? How do we make sense of this? And how does this practically apply to our lives and to our businesses? Because I think everybody's still figuring it out, right? Even like those that really know it, still figuring it out. And so I know for you kind of told me before we hit record, like you were not anti-AI by any means, but just kind of like trying to figure it out. You feel like you had a pretty good working thesis. I was definitely in the same boat, like always watching and interested, but like how much am I using it? I feel like I'm a little bit behind the curve there. But kind of talk us through just a little bit of your AI perspective and then how you landed on this thesis.
Yeah, so we actually got to do a little company hackathon, which is super awesome. I highly recommend it. And there's a tweet on my feed in how we structured it because I think it can probably go sideways pretty quickly, but ours went really well. And so this kind of hackathon, the whole point was to figure out ways to leverage ChatGPT in the business. And so this got me to thinking like, okay, how am I thinking of AI? Because like you said, I wasn't necessarily bearish on it. I just hadn't figured out where it landed in the toolkit, what type of tool it was, etc. And so where I kind of ended up after pontificating a little bit, landed on was almost like an analogy to an oil company. So the first thing you need is the data. And so the data being the land. So you need to find the land that's rich in resources, or the ocean spot that's rich in resources. And then the second stage is the actual analysis or framework. And that's again analogous to whether you're using like a little drill, whether you're using fracking, deep sea, like how are you going to extract that value from the actual land. And then the third spot or the third phase for me is kind of this refinement. Like, okay, now that I have this crude value and resource, how do I refine it into actual gasoline or petrol to put it in the engine of my business to make impact? And and what was really interesting is it kind of lines up as well, if you think of that as well in terms of a value chain, right? So like, do I own the land? What is the frameworks or analysis or the drills that I can put on this land? And then do I have the ability to refine it to make business impact? And if you think back in like, so I'm old, but like back in the day when they found all this oil in Saudi Arabia, like Saudi Arabia just had the land. They didn't have the actual way to
Right.
get the oil out of the land, out of the ground, and they didn't have the ability to refine that oil. And so you can think of yourself as kind of like, if you're a company, you're sitting on all this data, but like, how do I extract it? And so what I've been really interested in is, I think a lot of the AI hype was actually a head fake and pretty deteriorative to a lot of companies' value, because it just did it. Like people were just shiny object syndrome. I need to have AI. I need to have AI. However, and so with that, I think there's a lot of, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, just in is where I think there's just a lot of features masquerading as businesses right now. So I think
Yeah.
one of two things are going to happen. One, you're going to get, those people are going to get rolled up into, so like HubSpot just bought Clearbit. I think you're going to see kind of a rolling up of these features masquerading as businesses,
Yep.
or you're going to see the businesses that have the land and the extraction tools actually use AI as the refinement mechanism. And so, a perfect example of this, for people that don't know, there's a really awesome, it's very expensive, but super awesome, called Gong. And basically, your sales team is taking calls, blah, blah, blah. And Gong is internalizing all this data and using AI to surface either win rates or how much did one person talk than the other. What are, like, it's almost grading calls. And so, our VP of sales is actually now running our pipeline meetings from Gong, not Salesforce. Not to say Salesforce will ever get abstracted away. Salesforce is kind of that, the VCs love the term of system of record, super, super important, super valuable. But Gong is actually abstracting away Salesforce in that sense of, we don't have to be in Salesforce anymore. Our VP of sales is running the whole thing from
So cool.
Gong,
So
which
cool.
I find just absolutely incredible. Another one, which we're actually using right now, Riverside, where Riverside has
Yeah.
all this data because you're recording in it. And now you get AI notes, you get chapter notes, you get AI clips, you get all these things that now it's becoming not only this refinement mechanism, where it's not only extracting the data from me, but now it's refining it. So now I can have all these little magic clips. I can edit the podcast in ways that is just super easy. And so the too long didn't read for me was, I realized the way that AI fits into my life, and I think into most people's life in its current iteration, is that it's a multiplicative function. And so people think it's just going to build houses by itself. That's not how it works. But if you find a way, if you find the data, so you have either you find the land or you have access to that land, and you can put the right drill and analysis and framework over that land, and then have a refinement mechanism to then generate value for the business, like it's all systems go. And I've just been like, when you find those prompts and those things, like it can be like a religious experience where you're like, holy crap, that is absolutely insane. But I don't think it replaces people. The person that's going
Yes.
to get
Yes.
replaced is going to get replaced by somebody that uses AI, not by AI.
Yeah, I really like that, and well said. I love that. Love that analogy of drilling for oil. And I think, a lot of times we start with what can AI do for me, and that's not a bad place to start, because then you can
Sure.
work backwards. But then I think we don't work backwards sometimes, right? And
Yep.
so thinking about each of those steps, okay, I would really love for AI to do this, or what can AI do for me? But then we got to understand, okay, well, where do I have data, and what do I need to analyze, and things like
Yep.
that. And so yeah, really powerful. And for me, like I've just been experimenting with it more and finding even simple things. I love that gong example. I'm going to check that out. That's pretty crazy.
Gong's killing it.
Um, but I think even just looking like I'm leading our sales group through the book Pitch Anything by
Yep.
Oren Klaff, and really great book. And
Strong.
so even looking at like, instead, I took good notes on the book, but just querying Chat GPT, I'm like, hey, what were the points on this, or what were the two chemicals in the brain that he talks about that are triggered, that need to be triggered in a good sales process? And it's like, it knows it and it spits back out, and it's like, okay, cool. It's like my assistant right now as I'm working on these notes, and of course it's my ideas in terms of where I want it to go, and it's Oren Klaff's book, but ChatGPT is kind of pulling things together, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
So
Super
cool.
spot on.
Any insights from the hackathon? Like what came out of that, and how did that
Yeah.
work? So when I hear hackathon, I think the movie The Social Network,
Yeah.
where they're like doing shots and staying up
Yeah.
until 4 a.m. or all
Yeah.
night.
Not not that ragey. You got to remember, I'm old now. Maybe in my younger years.
Yeah,
But yeah,
exactly.
so ultimately we had a few people or a few hubs. So we had San Francisco where we're headquartered. People came to Austin. We had an Austin hub. We had an LA hub. We had a East Coast hub in New York, and then we had a India hub where we have a lot of dev. So our VP of engineering and product is in the States, and we have a few core engineers, but we're building out a pretty big engineering team in India. And then everybody would basically pitch their idea. What's going to be the business impact? What's going to be the thesis? How did it work? Show it off. And then what are the next steps for it? And so we originally, because this was where the thesis came from, where it's like we have all of our clients in a Slack channel, and then we have all of our sales calls in Gong. Like, how could we extract this data and then run, whether it's a sentiment analysis, stuff of it. And so we ran into some headwinds in terms of some data extraction and stuff like that. So then we ended up pivoting into an ad coherence score. And so what you can do is we built something, and we can drop it actually in the show notes. It's on the Chat GPT store, but ultimately you just upload a screenshot of the ad, and then you upload a screenshot of the post-click experience, and then it'll just analyze the coherence score just
Nice.
based on 6 or 7 different factors. It'll give you a coherence score. On top of it'll tell you, a few things to improve here or there and something like that. So that's kind of where we landed, where it was actually pretty awesome. And again, when using the AI in a way that's very direct and meaningful, it becomes again that multiplicative function where it's like, man, this is actually a really awesome like deliverable that you could take to either a client or a prospect saying, hey, I looked at a few of your ads. The coherence score isn't really high. That could be hurting your performance if this isn't on purpose, et cetera, et cetera. And so one of the ads actually we did was a favorite. So Sean Frank over at Ridge, huge fans of
Yeah.
the Ridge guys.
Shout out to Sean Frank and the crew.
Yeah,
He
they're
is like
killing it.
my favorite follow on Twitter. Also
He's
about to record an episode with him. So
oh
he's a
so
legend.
jealous. He's a legend. He's in Austin. He won't ever hang out with me. Sean, if you're hearing this, hang out with me. He actually just launched luggage too. He's the
Yeah.
consummate entrepreneur, man.
No
He
doubt.
really gets
No
it.
doubt.
But they had a really beautiful Twitter ad with the Miami Dolphins Ridge. So they did an NFL collection. But when you click on it, it goes to the whole NFL collection, which is a gorgeous page. Don't get me wrong, beautiful. There's no notes on the page. But my thesis was like, if that wasn't on purpose, because there's definitely a reason, like maybe you have this showcase team and you have NFL wallets, and then I go and I have it. But I wonder how much better it would convert if you went from a Miami Dolphins ad to an actual Miami Dolphins homepage where it has the
Mhm.
wallet front and center, maybe some upsells around that wallet that are peripherally related to the Miami Dolphins, et cetera. And so that was kind of the thesis around the coherence score, because we think of the customer journey essentially in 3 parts, where you have the content or the creative or the ad, you have the post-click experience, and you have the offer. And those are kind of the three pieces of anatomy, if you will, of the customer journey. And sometimes you can have an incredible ad, but it just doesn't get a ton of support from the post-click experience because it's a PDP maybe, or it's you're sending them to the homepage. And so there
Yep.
can be either a disjointed experience, or you just don't have the continuation in the storytelling, and at best, the augmentation of the said storytelling, where you got somebody to the party, but now there's Nickelback playing, the beer's flat, the people aren't as attractive as you were hoping, like, and it becomes this very mismatched kind of expectation to reality.
Love that, Nick. Is your landing page the equivalent of a party playing Nickelback? Which,
Exactly.
by the way, this is a quick side note. We won't dwell here long. But why is Nickelback so hated? I don't actually know many Nickelback songs, but it's like one of those things where you hear like a couple riffs and you're like, I mean, that's not that terrible. Man, everybody loves to hate on Nickelback. So,
Yeah.
any idea like
It,
where did this vitriol towards Nickelback come from?
it bubbled up in the zeitgeist because they just kind of became like a bit of a cliche, and they were very like they almost hit the pop music too on the nose, where you're just like,
Okay.
I don't like it. Like, I don't like it because you're a musician. I like it because you're using like these like psychological and like
Mm.
biological kind of
So
rhythms.
maybe
Like
they're drifting away from the art and
it,
like the passion. They're just like following a formula or
it's a
something.
perfect, almost like analog to what we're talking about with the AI, where it doesn't like it just didn't feel like they had character or passion, or they weren't an artist. It was like a
Yeah.
Milli Vanilli, but they actually made their music. Nobody, the kids won't get that reference, but
It's
Brett
so
and I
good,
get
Milli
it.
Vanilli, man.
Yeah,
I was a kid, but I was around in the Milli
they were
Vanilli age
banging. They had some
when it
bangers.
came to light. Man, that's some bangers. Yeah, Blame It on the Rain. Come
Yeah,
on, like
yeah,
look that up
yeah.
on YouTube. That still
But
speaks. But they
the,
didn't sing it. They
yep.
just somebody else
So
did.
I think that for me is where it, especially in music, when you have insincere artists, it feels
Yeah.
it's hard to get behind them.
Dude, that's such a good example, and I honestly didn't know. Like, I didn't know enough or care enough to like research it. But I was like, why does everybody hate Nickelback? It's just funny to hate on Nickelback, but
Well, I
that
think
totally
that
makes
definitely
sense.
did happen. The
Yeah,
impetus was, I think, the insincerity, and then they just became a meme, very similar to like Creed, when you have a little bit of the cringe of the lead singers and stuff like
yeah,
that. But
yeah. That's awesome. Okay, cool. So, yeah, which leads us to some interesting kind of side notes on AI. And you and I
yeah,
were talking about this before we hit record. If we're going to lean into AI a little bit more, there
yeah,
almost has to be like some renewed social contracts, so to speak,
yeah,
right? Or some agreements we make if
yeah.
we know that now AI is powering some of the things we do. So you want to kind of lay that out, what your thoughts are there, and then lay out
Yeah,
that
so
specific scenario.
yeah, this is one I haven't yet landed on. Like I've landed on the problem space, but I have yet to suss it out because I can make compelling arguments on both sides. So ultimately, the too long didn't read is one of the use cases I was thinking of. So I went to school for economics. In economics, there's a term called utility. You can just think of it like the positive outcome of the thing, which is a catch-all phrase. And so if you were writing a poem to your partner and the goal of that poem was to incite as much happiness and joy and love and excitement from these words, but you suck at writing poems, but you put a bunch of effort into it, but it still sucks, and you give it to your partner, and your partner's like, oh, awesome, this is really bumbly, blah, 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 but you put a bunch of effort into it. Thank you so much for, doing this. However, you could put the same amount of effort. So, like, again, economists love to say all things being equal. So, all things being equal, you put the same amount of effort into that because you know exactly what your partner likes. You know when you first met, you know your anniversary, you know their heritage, you know their favorite song. And you feed all these really meaningful data points that you have collected using effort and thought and things of that nature into ChatGPT. And then ChatGPT writes you this absolutely just tear jerking, emotional meltdown style poem that you then give to your partner, and they love you, they hug you, they kiss you, blah, blah, blah. But then you tell them that that was quote unquote written or augmented by Chat GPT. That would instantly take away from that feeling. And so I think there's just some things that need to happen in terms of the renegotiation of kind of, again, those social contracts. Because the two ways I see it: one, you don't compensate people at the highest level for time, you compensate them for output. And that
Yes.
output could
Yeah.
take them a minute, you know what I mean? Because they
Right.
have all this previous knowledge.
Yeah.
Whereas people that are on the lower end of the skill set or at a different part of their career, you're going to compensate them on time. And so that's the dichotomy where at what point there's also a really good Greek mythology fable of Theseus' ship. And so at what point is it not that ship anymore, but it is in thought, but not in actual resources and stuff. And so that's where I'm landing, where I don't know. Because at the same
Yeah.
time, like if you even flip it to a business context, right? Like if you came to me and you're like, hey, I have Brett Curry's awesome store and we sell these incredible gummies, Rabah. I want you to create an annual plan for me. I want you to do all this stuff. and I use ChatGPT to create this incredible annual plan. I'm putting the nuance in it. I'm doing this. And then I give it to you and you're paying me $20,000 for it. And I'm like, oh, but I created it in AI, and that, like, you would instantly be pissed off, even though
I'm
that
totally
was
pissed. I want a refund at
right.
some point.
Even
Yeah.
though
Yeah.
agnostic of the outcome, right?
Right.
Which is bananas, because you should be indexed on the outcome, not necessarily the way you get there. And so it feels a bit like magic. I don't know if any of your listeners ever done magic, but the worst thing you can do is reveal the trick. Because people are
Absolutely.
like, oh, that's it.
Then you
Oh, that's
feel,
all. And then
then you feel gypped. Yeah. Then it's no longer
totally
fun. That's
devalued.
such a good example. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know where it lands, but you said something really interesting as well, where it's almost that, like, almost every person that's written a book has an editor.
Yeah.
So at what point does the editor take ownership of? Does that make sense? Like,
Totally makes sense. Yeah.
If
Yeah.
there's more than 51% of edits, does that editor now become the author? Or
Right.
and
Right.
so it just gets into these very interesting quagmires intellectually that candidly I don't have the answer to, but I find very invigorating to talk about, because they are so complex but simple.
It's super interesting, and it's something that we're gonna have to figure out as we go. But I love that example of the poem for your significant other, because what's more emotional, or what has kind of strikes that chord. And there may be some people that are like, hey, you put in a ton of effort to this, and yes, you got a little help from ChatGPT. So I'm thrilled you remembered our anniversary and you remember where we met and you remember all these details. Like, that's enough for me. Other people are gonna be like, ew, like AI. Should I fall in love with ChatGPT now? Should I be going on a date with them or you? It reminds me of the movie. I don't know if you ever saw it, but it's called Roxanne with Steve Martin. It's like an 80s movie.
I love Steve Martin. No, I haven't
It's
seen
so
this
good.
yet.
So it's a great movie. So Steve Martin, he's this character with, like, he's got a giant nose, and so he's not super attractive, but he's in love with Daryl Hannah, and but he's like super good with words. And then there's this guy who plays Slider, I think, in the movie Top Gun. It's like real buff, rip guy, super handsome or whatever. And so Steve Martin's like giving Slider, whatever his character's name is in Roxanne, he's giving him all the words to say, like giving him poems and stuff.
Yes.
So he's reciting that to Daryl Hannah's character, and she falls in love with him.
Yeah.
But then she realizes it's Steve Martin, and then they fall. Anyway, but it's like, okay, yeah, there's some elements of that. Like, maybe I don't want you as either a spouse or an employee. Maybe I just want ChatGPT.
Yes.
Anyway, I noticed this too. We were talking about this, but we hire Google specialists and Amazon specialists. And one of the steps in the hiring process is we give them an exercise where we say, hey, this is a fake brand. These are some fake problems and opportunities for this brand. What would you do? And 2 came through my desk in pretty rapid succinction. I was like, this is ChatGPT, right? you look at the answers to those questions, and it's like every answer was 3 paragraphs. Every answer was like, first paragraph was firstly, this, secondly, thirdly, and we're using words like we'd have to rectify this. I'm like, there's no way this person wrote that. And so then I didn't want to read the rest of it. I was like angry,
Yes.
But if someone had like put their own personality into it and they needed help with a specific sentence or like a specific thing, that I'm okay with. I even had someone on our team who was like, I'm having trouble like articulating this thing. So I had ChatGPT help me, and I didn't want to read it. I was like, was this you? Right? Is this the machine? Like, what? Anyway, so it definitely creates some conundrums for sure.
Yeah. It's so interesting, because I feel like it gets to such a core part of the human experience.
Yeah.
Where we say we care about outcomes and we index on outcomes, rightfully so. But there's also a certain aspect of the paths you take to get to that outcome really matter. And so it's just such a fascinating for me, because I candidly, I don't know the answer. Like, if delight in making my partner super happy is really what I'm indexed on, then like, why wouldn't I? Like, for example, I did 30 days in Europe, like a big vision quest in Europe. And I used 90 to 95% of ChatGPT to plan that whole trip for me, where I said, hey, I am leaving from Austin, Texas on X date. I want to be back on Y date. I care about history. I care about culture, food, nice hotels, etc. You put in all your parameters and stuff. And I want you to make me the easiest, most efficient pathway. And it basically made me this beautiful loop across Europe that would have taken me forever. And then you can also kind of have these kind of knock-on effects of like, okay, cool. And then by city, I was like, what are the best hotels? What's the best areas? What are the best restaurants? What are photographic spots I should go see? What are, points of interest, blah, blah, blah. And you get all this, and it's, man, it's incredibly, incredibly compelling. And so I think the only big worry I have is there is a huge opportunity for like manipulative arbitrage. And I think that is something that is a little bit societally scary for me, where you can get people that have usually needed to acquire X or Y or Z skills that have been previously constrained by time, where it's
Yeah.
like you just had to put in the time to get these skills. And now you can get to kind of like a matrix level where like now I know Irish junk boxing and jujitsu and stuff. So that's the only thing but at the end of the day, I don't know, there's the only thing you can do is be a good person, and hopefully you can,
Totally.
put the good karma in the balance of beating out the bad karma. But that is
Yeah.
one thing that worries me a little bit, where you're seeing some crazy scamming stuff, especially with kind of like older people, where they're able to kind of spoof the voices of
Yeah.
their.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
terrible, man. Like stealing
For
from old
sure. For
people and
sure.
stuff. Like it's horrible. But again, like technology more or less is, agnostic, where
Right.
it's amoral. Like you can take
Yeah,
a framing
totally.
hammer and build a house, or you can, hurt somebody with it.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And I do think we'll figure it out. And hey, maybe like a quick takeaway that just kind of came out of this discussion is use AI, but don't be Nickelback with AI, right? Like use AI to like be authentic, to bring out your authentic self, to just
A
enhance your
multiplier.
work, multiply, yeah, to
It's a
make your
multiplicative
work
function.
better. Don't
Yes.
use AI just to do the work for you,
So well
because then
put.
you're going to be, the Nickelback in your industry, and nobody wants that. And so,
So well
yeah,
put.
because I think
So
this
good.
works, right? Like if you use physical products, like would my wife want me to go make her a purse or go
Yeah.
make her a
Yeah.
ring, or just wants me to buy one? She just wants me to
Yeah.
buy one, right? I'm actually good with words. I like words, and so I would want to write her something. But
Yeah.
if she found out that, man, I was stuck with this thing, and so I had AI kind of help me, she'd probably be okay with it, right? So it's
Yeah.
like we'll figure this out as we go. But if we're just using AI to multiply and bring out our authentic self, and I think we're moving on the right path. So
Yep.
interesting stuff. Appreciate you bringing your perspective. Love talking about AI. Any final thoughts on that? Because otherwise, I want to transfer to the shopper journey.
No, I will just say though, again, not to beat a dead horse, but the people that are not embracing AI and finding ways to integrate it into their workflows will get replaced by people that
Absolutely.
do, because what you're
Yeah.
finding is really smart people can use AI. So like, for example, going back to that consulting analogy, like creating that annual plan used to be a huge lift. And
Monumental.
now if you're a charismatic, awesome person and you can deploy this, you can sit across 3 to 5 clients, especially if there's not even any executional work. And it's not like you're misrepresenting anything, because like you
Right.
said, if you're just having this multiplicative function, and now I can build out this whole annual plan, nuance it to the client, yada yada yada. Now you're really again augmenting your output in ways that it's pretty transformative. Because Brett, I also fancy myself a little bit of a wordsmith, and
Yeah.
every time I put it into AI, it's better. It never goes 0 to 1. Like I can't ever say, write me this article and it's better than what I wrote. But
Right.
I can take a 90 to 95% done essay and put it into AI, and every time it's beat me, which
It's
is,
better. It's
it's a little
better. Yeah.
scary. It's a little scary.
Yeah, it is, but that's a really good way to put it. So awesome. So I totally agree. Like you got to be using AI, experiment with it. You'll get better over time. You'll figure it out over
Yep.
time. So you just got to dive in. Let's talk about customer journey, because this is something that we're both passionate about. I'm more on the ad side. You're kind of on the customer experience side. But
Yep.
where do you think as an industry, the D2C world is missing the boat? Like where are we failing our customers and our shoppers with the shopper journey? I know you kind of laid out 3 things, the ad, the post-click experience, and the offer, but any specifics there on where are we failing?
Yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily failing, but I think as stores get larger, you want to become more sophisticated in your offerings. And so being able to offer that, again, create a more cohesive customer journey, I think net is just going to be a better experience and generate more, not only value for the consumer, but also, business impact, whether that be revenue, more retention, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think it's almost like corduroy, right? Like what's old is new again. And so you're seeing that. I don't want to use the P word, like personalization. I'm not super into like the quote unquote personalization. I like to use the C word, more of like customization of like, okay, we can use these data sets to then make a more customized journey that's going to allow for people to not only surface the products they want, but by doing that, by merchandising better, by putting the messaging in a way that's meaningful to them at their part, at their specific place in that journey, you're just going to get better results. And so I think what you're going to see, or at least that's the thesis at Format, and personally my thesis is you're going to see these bigger stores abstract away kind of the main Shopify site. And so the way I've been explaining it to people is almost like a solar system where you have Earth being your Shopify store, your sales commerce store, what have you. You have a ton of returning revenue. You have a ton of brand equity. You don't want to mess with any of that. And now you can build these constellation sites around Earth when people want to go explore, because what we were talking about, where I kind of bifurcate the customers into connoisseurs and explorers. And a connoisseur is, I know my local pub. I know what the drink I like. I know the seat I like. I know where the jukebox is and the music on the jukebox. Just get out of my way and let me give you money, which is great. But then you also have this explorer mindset, which is more of like the growth and retention teams, re-engagement teams. And this is more of like a tourist or a traveler. I just landed in Vienna or Budapest or Prague, and I don't have any
tell me about the
preferences.
neighborhood. Tell me about the bar. Tell me about this drink. Tell me what should I listen to on the jukebox? Like guide me. I want the experience. Yeah.
Precisely. And so for the most part, these bigger stores are essentially handcuffed to either a PDP, a lander that takes forever to get built, or a homepage. And I think you're going to see some unshackling of that, where there's going to be some more sophistication, especially again, like when you overlay AI, where one of the things that we're really interested in for kind of like a Q3, Q4 launch is being able to ingest, whether it's Klaviyo data or what have you, and be able to not send everybody to the same page, where you can actually get the almost like an Amazon homepage experience, where everybody's Amazon homepage is different, or the Facebook feed, like everybody's Facebook feed is totally customized to them. And so I think that's where it can get really interesting, where you can start to ingest all this data, then you refine it. This customer, we want to either get more LTV out of this customer, or more AOV out of this customer, or we want them to get down this certain product path. How can we get them down that path? And you can have this more, I guess, said a different way. I think we're going to transition from broadsword to scalpel. And you're still going to have your broadsword. Don't get me wrong, but like that broadsword is
useful
heavy
tool.
to
Never
swing.
get away from it.
Yeah. Exactly. It's heavy to swing, and it's very crude, right? Like you're just taking these big hacks, where this scalpel, I can start to have these really precise surgeries to then unlock this customer value that I can then materialize in the business.
Love that, and so and the analogy of the regular at the pub versus the tourist is such a good mental picture. But we have that all the time.
Yep.
With new shoppers versus returning shoppers to our stores, and so Format's helping kind of solve that. Can you give some use cases, some examples? And I know we can't talk about specific brands and things like that because people want to keep a close guard on what they're doing. But walk us through a couple of use cases that will bring this to life a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So a few of them, one are kind of the high SKU set, but also high segmentation kind of stores. So think of like ball caps, or or like a big clothing retail that have men, women, kids, things of that nature. And so being able to segment and filter that merchandising and that SKU set to the actual people, so you don't get the kind of department store vibe. You get more of this concierge feel of like, oh, Brett, I know you're this size, I know you like these colors, and I know you like these cuts. Here's the merchandise that we can show for you. So almost that concierge curation, shop that look kind of style. We also have really cool, we have a bunch of beauty brands that are really heavily leveraging quizzes, which isn't anything super, super new, but it's just really nice to, again, have that filtration function where you can start to have that self-merchandising in a way.
Nice.
And then a lot of subscription. So being able to do things to push first order subscriptions, which is super holy grail. I don't even buy first order subscriptions. And so that's something where being able to give that testing velocity, because we not only have the experiences, but we have experiments as well, where you can test these different experiences against whether it's an advertorial, a quiz, a video shop, a hero shop, things of that nature. And so we've seen a ton of just really awesome stuff, and really in supplements and apparel have been our biggest really home run hitting vectors. And then we're starting to expand out into other areas like not health and beauty, subs, health and beauty, apparel, and I'm spacing on the other categories that we're penetrating. But yeah, so I mean, ultimately, either high SKU set or the ability to unshackle your growth team from the actual main Shopify site are really the big value vectors that we are currently pounding down. And then obviously the experimentation vector, where being able to test whether it's shipping thresholds, offers, et cetera, at a not only low lift in terms of expense to the company, but also the high velocity as well.
Yeah, but protecting the core site,
that's
all that. So,
100%. Yeah, that's the main thing, de-risking. You don't want to touch any of the brand equity and or returning revenue.
For sure. So I love that concierge angle and that kind of that picture there. So in that environment, so it's a high SKU count apparel brand. So I come in, I land on one of these satellite sites rather than on the core Shopify or BigCommerce or whatever site.
Yep.
And so then I'm kind of led through a quiz where they find out my size and my preferences and things like that. And then now it's a curated shopping experience. Is that sort of how that goes?
Exactly. So that's one pathway. The other thing is being able to use your past purchases to then generate that shop for whether it's a Klaviyo, SMS, what have you. So almost like merge tags on steroids, but instead of merge tags, you're actually using the merge to identify different types of merchandising that's going to be ideal for almost like dynamic product ads in a way, where how they merchandise that ad inventory for you. That's what we're trying to do on the back end for a lot of these, especially again, that high SKU count. And then there's also just the self kind of selection, where the media buyer has X or Y or Z in the actual creative, and then being able to show those products on the post-click experience. And then the tertiary thing is influencers. So you have the influencer ad, and then the influencer now has this dedicated lander with their face, their recommendations, et cetera. Again, you see the macro concept of coherence, right? Where I see this influencer, but then I don't see him on the page. That's weird. Right. Or I see this product and purse on the page or handbag on the page, but now I'm on the homepage and all it is showing me is jackets or something. And so that disjointed journey, I think, is going to go away as people get more and more sophisticated, because before it was just hard. Like you either had to spin up a landing page, which again, if you're a smaller store, it's not a big deal. But as you get these bigger stores, like again, nobody's allowed to touch the Shopify site, or it takes 2 or 3 weeks because you're on Salesforce Commerce or something. And nothing against Salesforce Commerce, tons of big people on there, but it's not configurable by any stretch of the imagination. Like you're submitting a Sprint ticket or something, like, can you change this color or this headline? And it's like, it's 2024. Like you can't have your growth teams operating in a way that is your website almost has hours type of thing.
Super interesting. Yeah, I'm excited to continue to see use cases and see this work, because it sounds like this is great for the first time shopper to really help give them a customized experience. It's great for different ad experiences and influencers. So there is that cohesion. And, when I click on this ad and I land on the page, I feel like I'm in the right place.
Exactly.
Everything makes sense. I feel like, hey, this was designed for me. So that's great. But then it also sounds like then you can, returning customers could be like the pub visitor that's like, hey, get out of my way. I know where I'm going, so I'll just use the main site. Or you could configure something custom for them too, where it's like, hey, I'm clicking on this Klaviyo link, and now I'm going to my little shop almost that's built for me, configured for me.
Exactly. So that's the big thesis. I mean, that was the pitch that got me to come, where we want to be that connective tissue between the content and the commerce. And then what gets really exciting is, because right now we're really up market, but the kind of expansion plans for the TAM is essentially going down market, where we can almost play in that like ClickFunnels area, where you're selling an info product or something where you just don't need Canon to kill a mosquito, right? I don't need this huge website. I just want landers that I can send people to. I hook up my Stripe account, blah, blah, blah. And so now we have this nice kind of barbell effect, where we're eating the market from both sides.
It's really cool, man. Really cool. Excited to watch the journey and the progress unfold. So people are listening to this and like, I got to check this out. Got to find out more. Where can they go to learn more?
Yeah, just fermatcommerce.com, FERMAT commerce.com, and then book a demo on there, or just ping me on the Twitters if you have any questions. Me, Rashab, and Shreyas, the two co-founders, super active on social. So you'll see us out in the streets.
And I'll link to your Twitter profile in the show notes. But for those that are listening on the go, that just want to check it out, what's your handle?
Yeah, it's just my first and last name. So at Rabah Rahil, RABAH RAHIL. Yeah, just hit me up, at me. Send me a DM if you feel like riding the lightning. The chances of you getting a response are very, very low. But I try and respond. Let me rephrase that. The chances of you getting a timely response are very low, but I try, and I'm actually going through right now a batch reply. So I appreciate all the love. I just
you're a popular guy, man. People are hitting you up on the social.
It's a jungle. So, my DMs and Slacks, DMs and emails, not my strong suit. I need some AI there.
Gotta be something there. So check him out on the socials. Reach out on the website for the demo, but. Rabah, super fun, man. I think you've earned round 3 whenever that is.
Let's go.
Whenever that makes sense. So,
and then I got to do the shameless plug. We just started Equation of Excellence, so you have to come on now. This is the
new pod, and it's Equation of Excellence.
Yes. So everything will be kind of math puns because of the company was named after a super famous mathematician. So you know how I like my puns.
I'm not sure that super famous and mathematician go together.
Yeah,
like super famous in the math world. But anyway, I actually love math too. So Equation of Excellence, I'm there, man. Just let me know when. But yeah, brother, appreciate it. You killed it, and can't wait to see what's next for you.
You're the best, Brett. You are just not only one of the best humans, but incredible host. And I need to work on my sultry radio voice. I feel whatever you're doing over there. I need the secrets, man. You're sounding good. The little NPR voice over there, killing it.
NPR. Hopefully not putting people to sleep. But yeah, it's good. So hey, man, we covered a wide range of topics from AI to Nickelback to 80s, pop culture, movies and stuff like this. This was super good. So
even snuck in a Milli Vanilli reference. I mean, come on,
Vanilli,
people.
Man, that was the first on the show, and I'm so excited. So awesome, Rabah. Thanks, man. Looking forward to next time.
You're the best, Brett. Thanks so much, brother.
Absolutely. And as always, thank you for tuning in. We love to hear your feedback on the show. Love that review on iTunes or wherever you listen. And with that, until next time, thank you for listening.